Recording.
It's just loading just now. That's it, recording now.
Grant, thank you. Welcome everyone to IGB. I am not a fan of chairing online meetings, so bear with me because this could be very brick-a-block today. But I'll go to Democratic Services for any apologies we have.
Yep, we have apologies from Jill Main and Claire Gardner.
Okay, thank you. And the order of business?
So the order of business with your acceptance, Chair, is we're going to hold items 5.7 and items 5.8 until the end of the agenda, just as Eloise is having trouble with trains at the moment. She's presenting on behalf of Jill. So she's requested if it could please be held at the end of the agenda.
That's no problem. Is that it might be 5.7 and 5.9?
Yeah, sorry,
Yeah.
5.7
No,
and
that's fine.
5.9.
Okay, grand. I'll remind members that now or at any point during the meeting, you can declare any interest. Just please indicate by raising your hand. And obviously, as per many of you will know from COVID times, dare I mention, anyone that wishes to speak, please raise your hand using the hand function. And when not speaking, if you could make sure your microphones are muted, that would be great, just to prevent any interference. I will go on to 4 minutes of the previous meetings, 4.1 minutes from the previous Midlothian IGB board on the 24th of April. That's submitted for approval. Does anyone have anything to highlight from that? Keith?
Sorry, Connor, it was actually the previous one, just to declare my usual, that I am the joint chair of Alzheimer's Scotland.
That's perfect. Thank you, Keith. Has anyone got anything to raise from the previous minutes? Morag?
Sorry again, not relating to the minutes, but just to welcome Andrew is with us today. Andrew, thank you for, I think you're stepping in for our vacant position just now as well, so just welcome.
Thanks, Morag. Welcome, Andrew. I'm sure you will have a blast. Okay, I'm not seeing any hands for the minutes, so I'll take silence as happy to approve. Okay, grand. 4.2 minutes of the strategic planning group on the 20th of March 25. These are for noting only. If anyone would like to highlight anything, we do have updates throughout the agenda, so hold them for then. And 4.3 minutes of the Audit and Risk Committee, 6th of March 25 for noting only, and similar for that item, we will be addressing that within the agenda. On to public reports, 5.1 IGB member reappointment, Democratic Services. To come to you for that one.
Thank you, Chair. I'm presenting the paper on behalf of Democratic Services. The purpose of this report is to note and approve the reappointment of Balde Sousa as the lead voting member of the Midlothian Integration Joint Board. Board members are asked to firstly note and approve the extension of term from the 1st of August 2022 to the 31st of March 2025, retrospectively, of Balde Sousa as lead voting member of NHS Lothian on Midlothian Integrated Joint Board until the 31st of July 2025. And secondly, members are asked to reappoint Balde Sousa as the lead voting member of NHS Lothian on Midlothian Integrated Joint Board from the 1st of August 2025 for a further 3-year term. That's all from me. Thank you all for your attention.
Thank you, Maria. Yeah, thank you for that, for note and approval. So I think that would probably be a really good idea, or we would be in a bit of a mess come August, Val?
No, no, I'm not going to do anything dramatic here, other than to say, and this isn't really to do with us, but see Chris Graham's letter to Lisa Cumming, Midlothian. It's actually, dear Lisa, non-voting member appointment in the letter. So just if we can kind of align that, because it's obviously a voting member, just in case anybody was to pick that up.
Yeah, no, that's fine. We can go
Thanks,
back and we'll go back and confirm it's just a typo.
Yeah,
I'd
that's
imagine
grand.
it's just a typo, but yeah, I'm assuming everyone's happy to approve Val's reappointment back to the board. I'm seeing lots of nods, so yes. Thank you for that.
Of course.
We will go on to 5.2, which is my report. not much, to be honest, other than that this is my last meeting as chair. Sad that it's virtual, but looking forward to August being in the new chamber with Val chairing. So that is all from me on that front. In terms of the Scottish Government, they're experiencing delays still in recruiting non-executive members to NHS Lothian. So we're still awaiting that process. We currently have 3 rather than 4 non-execs on the board. Of course, with Andrew stepping in, that's very handy. Midlothian are continuing to work with NHS Lothian to minimise the impact of this on the IJB. Both the Council and NHS Lothian have formally acknowledged the receipt of the Midlothian IJB directions for 25-26. And please also note that today was meant to be our last meeting in the Council chambers, but as Morag alluded to, we will be moving and will be experiencing a new chamber. So that should hopefully be set up for the 21st of August, but we will just wait and see. But I'm sure Democratic Services will keep everyone aware as to what is happening with meetings and how they will take place. But that's all from me. So I'll move on to 5.3, Chief Officer's Report. Morag.
Thank you, Chair. I guess just in case I forget the end, just to thank you for being Chair for the last year and hopefully continuing to be Vice Chair, depending on the Council decision next week. So thank you personally for your support and on behalf of the board, Connor. So as normal, I presented my Chief Officer's report, which gives you an overview of some of the developments since the last board meeting. Just 2 or 3 things to pick up and then very happy to open up to questions as per normal. As it says in my introduction, NHS Lothian have set up a gold and silver command structure around a severe and enduring major incident that focuses pretty much on the Royal Edinburgh site around bed capacity. As I said, there's gold meetings weekly and silver meetings twice weekly. So I go to the gold meetings with my director's hat on, and Nick Claytor goes to silver meetings. The gold command meeting is chaired by the chief exec herself. It's got that level of focus on it, with a view to each of the areas looking at their bed usage and capacity, and again probably putting a lot more focus on process pathways and culture within the Royal Ed, and probably Edinburgh to a certain extent as well. I will say that generally, well, always pretty much Midlothian operates within its bed base. The main challenge just now around acute mental health beds as well, and as of today we've got 7 people in out of 8 with 1 potential discharge today as well. So Midlothian, we generally have a pretty good mental health model. East Lothian's pretty much the same as ours as well. Edinburgh have got some challenges around their infrastructure and how it works, and as I say, what's definitely coming out of the initial 3 or 4 meetings are around ways of working within the site itself. So again, we will keep you updated on that, and I'll update you in each of my Chief Officer reports about where we get to. There remains a significant focus again still on unscheduled care, and I'm again sorry doing the presentation on unscheduled care, so I'll give you a full update at the presentation later in the agenda around performance around that. And again, just to note again the continued excellent performance around substance use, particularly around the A11 access to treatment target, which maintained at 100%. And those of you that have been with me for a couple of years will remember, you know, a couple of years ago that was down probably about 35-40%. So again, just to celebrate the success around the maintaining of 100% in that. So again, just key points to bring out, colleagues, and just very happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Morag. Has anyone got any questions for Morag on her report? Keith?
Thank you, Cara. Yeah, there was just a couple of things. Well, first of all, I was, like everyone, very pleased that both the substance misuse performance and also the social work team as well, who seem to be doing very well. I had just a couple of questions. One was about the adults with incapacity. It's nice to see we've got more mental health officers, but I was just wondering about the target, because it says within 12 weeks. And you know, in relation to guardianship orders, is that relevant to that? Is that a target that they actually exceed by some way? Because obviously 12 weeks sitting in a bed in a hospital waiting for a guardianship order may be an issue for our occupied beds and delayed discharges. So that was one thing. And the other thing was a bit about partner homicides, but there wasn't really any. I mean, it was a very brief thing. I'm just wondering if we actually have a problem with that. And finally, just the adult support and protection. Is there a trend with that? Is that going up or continuing to rise? And if so, do we know what's driving it? So thanks very much.
Thank you, Keith. I'll pass over to Nick, who will pick up these three things. Thank you.
Okay, hi Keith. So in terms of adult support protection figures, I'll deal with them first if that's okay. Yes, we have seen an incremental increase in adult support and protection referrals in business consistently over the last number of years. Actually, it's risen. There has been an introduction around a national data set for this, but it's proving problematic to implement fully, and there's probably people on the call who've been around this agenda for as long as I have and longer actually, and actually getting national data has always been quite challenging in terms of measuring apples with apples across the country. So we have a higher number of referrals than East Lothian, for example, and that's been consistent, and we've been trying to work out exactly why that is, and it's all to do, we think, ultimately to do with operational issues and how we manage the referrals when they come in. What I would say is we're comfortable with that. We're comfortable that we manage risk correctly. We're comfortable with the thresholds we have. Sometimes we perhaps err on the side of caution, which will lead to that increase as well, Keith, but we're comfortable with how we apply the legislation and the procedures. I'll jump forward then to the allocations, and I'll maybe ask Fiona to come in around the partner homicide issue in a second. But in terms of the adults with incapacity, that is a 12-week standard for allocation of the work, so it's not completion of guardianships, which can take significantly longer. The reason it's as long as that is to do with private guardianships. Without getting too technical, there's local authority applications and private applications. Private applications are left with the family to pursue with private solicitors, and it can often take quite a length of time. And we can't do our reports until they have done the work with the solicitors and it has all been agreed, which is why we have the 12-week standard. For the vast majority of guardianship applications that we make, which are often some of the most risky people and some of the most challenged people, it's far less than 12 weeks. It's usually within a matter of days, actually. And I would also offer hopefully a bit of assurance that when we're talking about people that are delayed in hospital, we would expedite those for allocation as well. So allocation is only one part of it. The wider issue ultimately is how long it takes to go through the court process with guardianships, and regardless of whether it's a local authority or a private one, that still takes too long. That's one of the reasons that the review of the legislation is still ongoing. It's taking far longer than it frankly should have done. I mean, the Adults with Incapacity Act now is 25 years old plus, so we do need reform. We probably need to take the guardianship issue out of the courts, as we've done with mental health disposals, and move them more to tribunal. There's lots of discussions around different types of guardianships as well, and making it much easier to get guardianship for certain things. I think as long as it's within a sheriff court context, it's going to take too long for what we need it to do. So that's why the timescales are quite long. It's not necessarily that we are dragging our feet, and I know that wasn't what you were suggesting, but it's really points of law and legislation and policy. And Fiona, I don't know if you are able to say anything around the partner homicide issue.
Yeah, certainly. Hi, Keith. So the Justice team were instrumental in developing a Women in Justice network, and that's a national network that there is a national offer for all local councils and partnerships to join that, including third sector stakeholders. It's looking at all areas of interest within women and the justice system. And really it was an identification of Professor Jane Monckton-Smith, who had developed a recent piece of research looking at the homicidal timeline, and it was really to share that piece of research within the network to raise awareness and to have some meaningful discussion across all stakeholders and agencies involved. So not necessarily a kind of key local issue for us, but raising awareness and sharing information.
Thank you very much for those very full answers.
Thank you. I'll move on now to Andrew.
Thanks, Connor, and thanks everyone for the paper as well. Very interesting. Two questions from me. One was around the mental health work, and just really to understand how we're planning to report on that as it goes. Morag, I think you said you bring regular reports, but it would be good to get a sense of what we're looking at and the extent to which that will reach out into the community services as well, because I know that's of kind of interest to us. So was that question. And the other question was really around just to thank and to welcome the content of information around the adult duty social worker and the feedback from clients in there. It's really good to get sort of feedback in the paper around what people who receive our services think of it, and that's really helpful. But it'd be useful to know what the sample size was around how you get that. So that's me on my techie points. So apologies for that. And I'm happy to take that offline if it's not available, because I appreciate I'm digging into the weeds a bit.
Thanks, Andrew. I'll let Nick come in on that one. But in terms of the reporting, so NHS Lothian Gold has been operating for about 4 weeks now. There are papers going to the senior management team next week. So we'll do a combination of either I'll give you an update in my chief officer report of the kind of high level stuff, or we'll do a formal kind of mental health update paper. So we'll see how things pan out, I think, from a Lothian perspective, and we'll decide what's best, but we'll report regularly back to the IGB, particularly around any implication of anything from Midlothian. I will say that Midlothian is cited as actually having a very good mental health model. Now, we spend quite a lot of money on that. We believe it's the right thing to do. So, for example, as you know, our consultants follow our patients in and out of the Royal Edinburgh. That doesn't happen in Edinburgh. East Lothian do the same as well. So we've actually got a pretty well functioning model. What we don't have is we have 4 people delayed in the Royal Edinburgh site just now that are waiting grade 5 accommodation. So that's really complex people that need really 24/7 care. We did look at that a couple of years ago. It was going to be around about £1.5 million to do that. So we don't have that, but we have restarted that conversation with colleagues in East Lothian to see what the art of the possible is in doing something together around that. Now, there will be a cost around that. There will be a cost around, I guess, the mental health improvements that Lothian are looking to do as well. So there may be an opportunity for us to feed into that. But I certainly, at my overview at the Gold meeting, are raising that as being a particular challenge. But beyond that, for Midlothian, as I say, we pretty much work within our bed base, and it is noted that we have a really quite a good model of care in place. So again, I'll keep you updated, Andrew, as I guess the maturity of reporting takes place through Lothian, and as I say, I'll either put it in my chief officer report or we'll do a standalone paper on progress. Nick, can I hand over to you, please?
Yeah, we don't have. I don't have the sample size to hand, Andrew, so we'll get it for you.
Okay, thank you. I'll go on to Val now.
Thanks, Chair. Just really commend you as always for the information in the report. So thanks for the collation of that. Big well done to the MAT programme again. Again, I was going to ask about the mental health side of things, the community model, but Morag has given a very full answer there. And I guess the only thing I would say is I know it's a really complex agenda. If there's anything that the IJB can do to support that in any way, I think it's really important that we put our weight behind it in terms of that transfer to the community and getting all those pathways and processes in place. I wanted to commend the foundation apprenticeships as well. And again, it's just that early intervention in terms of the workforce side of things and just pulling people along and encouraging. So really good. Again, wanted to commend Justice for their performance around discharges, releases from prison, and the housing record in particular. Because that's like at 100%, that shows a really good working relationship with the council and housing department. And for those of you around long enough, you'll know that I always regret that housing wasn't brought into the partnership because I think we've got so much in common. So really pleased to see that. So a couple of things for me. I noticed that the ASN, there was going to be a significant increase in the additional needs, folks coming through from children's services. And I wondered what so of course, we want to get the processes right for these families and children. But, it would be daft if I wasn't sort of a little bit concerned about the cost to adult services there as well. And I'm wondering if we have if we've got the right process in place there, if we've got the right conversations in place so that children's services are sympathetic to the cost of adult services that will hold these young people and their families in our care for quite a long time. So that's one question. And the other one might be a little simpler. The agenda for change and some of the challenges that are being seen in primary care. I'm just wondering if the information that Rebecca and others are picking up, if all of that is getting fed into Alison MacDonald and the programme that is being taken forward in terms of monitoring and resourcing that, plus looking at any deficit from a financial point of view, if that's being fed in at board level. I'm sure it is, but I just wanted that assurance. Thanks, Morag.
Thank you, Val. I'll take the AFC question. Yeah, so obviously you know the phase 1 was reducing by a half an hour, so that in most of our areas has been managed to be absorbed. There will be some financial reallocation around that. The bigger concern across the whole of Lothian is by next year moving down for that extra hour. Now, there is, again, Lothian have received funding to cover that. I believe Chris and I have had some discussion around this. I believe there will be templates coming out to us from an HSC perspective to note down what the accumulation of that activity are, where the high risk areas are, and then what finance we need to request to draw down. So, for example, some of our challenges around, or particular challenges, I guess, would be around teams like district nursing and so on as well, that are already kind of very tight as it is, and taking an extra hour out per person is significant for us too. So we're engaging in the Lothian process around that. There is a kind of working group set up that is led under the HR banner. And again, we'll keep you updated, but there is absolute risk in that. There is Scottish Government funding to allocation to fund it all. Chris, you'll want to come in here probably. I believe it's not as much as it should be, surprise, surprise. But again, we'll work with it and certainly be working with the teams around where the high risk areas are. In terms of transitions, again, we are working very closely with council officers around this. We have got a specific post, transitions lead post now, who are bringing together adult and children's services and actually starting to plan the transitions much earlier. So there's the actual human benefit of that journey, if you like, but you're absolutely right. There's the cost and the implications of the cost on adult services versus the cost of having a child, for example, in a special needs school. So Nick will be able to talk to that a little bit more than I can around that. The challenge is that we have got rising numbers of people moving across either into Midlothian or through our school system that are hitting adult services. And we talked to you over the last couple of years around the financial challenge that brings us. So it is there. There's some obviously people move in during the year and you can't plan for that, but we are trying to take a proactive approach and change the way we prioritise the planning around that. Nick, you will talk much better than I did about that.
Yeah, no, that's pretty much it in a nutshell. I suppose it's getting a lot better, I would say, Val. It's I think previously we probably relied on good interpersonal relationships between managers. We've set up a much more robust process. As Morag said, we've got a post that's aligned to both children's services and adult services that works specifically on transitions. We're getting far better at tracking these young people in the system. We're doing a bit of work, I see Chris has got his hand up, we're doing a bit of work around the financial implications. There is still a little bit of rub that you alluded to around, there is a perception you get more in children's services, and then when you transition over to adults, we are sometimes having to have difficult conversations with families, particularly parents, to say you're not going to get as much respite, you're not going to be meeting the eligibility criteria in the same way, and that is challenging for us, but it is getting better. The numbers are pretty fluid. We thought we had around 27 people coming across this year, and we think it's slightly less than that at the moment, actually, but we're still trying to bottom that out. There's probably pressures across around transport as well, which we're looking at, and there's a big council-wide piece of work around school transport and social care transport, and we've got a work stream around savings around that, but that's a particular pressure. And we also lack sufficient college placement sometimes for people within Midlothian, so people are having to travel out with. So our size and scale sometimes counts against us with transitions. People are often having to go to Edinburgh for services, which is more costly. But the biggest issue is probably the rising number and frankly the rising acuity as well. We're seeing complex health conditions in a way we haven't seen before. So people are not just coming with a learning disability, they're coming with a learning disability and significant physical disabilities often, or further challenges, and it's creating quite a lot of difficulty for us in the community and how we manage that. And it probably, just finally, it's probably the biggest reason we overspend on our resource panel budget. I would say learning disabilities, and Fiona and Chris are here, and Fiona's closer to it than me, but I think it's probably fair to say, Fiona, that learning disabilities is probably our biggest financial pressure, without a shadow of a doubt.
Good. Can I just come back on that, Nick Morag? Sorry, Chair as well. Might there be an opportunity or wisdom in doing some scenario planning on a sort of 2 or 3 year basis, just to try and capture that complexity, the cost of that complexity? And it's not just the cost of it, it's sort of to be able to provide in a way that you're talking about the grade 5 accommodation, because I'm sure there'll be a mental health element to that as well. So would it be wise to do some scenario planning there in terms of numbers, costs, but also accommodation and the kind of thing you're talking about, occupation, education, training, that kind of thing? Just a thought, folks. But thank you for the very full answer, Nick.
Yeah, well, just to quickly come back on that, Val, that is exactly what the transitions group, which is embedded within the GIRFEC structures, but that's exactly what the transitions group should be doing. So I will double check that is what they're doing. But that would be my expectation, that we would be planning for 3 or 5 year horizon planning, not just numbers and acuity, but also the types of service and support we can provide.
Perfect, thank you. I noticed that Chris has got his hand up.
Thank you. It was just to come in on a couple of little bits there. So, Val, you're absolutely right about trying to map out those transitions costs going forward. We'll be trying to capture that through the medium-term financial strategy. I probably won't go into too much detail just now because it's on the agenda, but for me, that's a key component of how our cost base is going to move in the next 3 to 5 years. And then I suppose the second bit is try and give you a bit of reassurance around the agenda for change stuff. So there are 2 elements to it. So we have got the hour reduction that's come in, but we've also got the potential regrading from the band 5 to band 6, which I think was largely focused on nursing just now. So both are likely to have quite significant cost implications. Morag's absolutely right. Scottish Government have provided an allocation to health boards. Because there's this ongoing assessment, I don't think if anybody truly knows how affordable it is. So the reassurance is there is money. We don't quite know if it's enough yet, but Midlothian are absolutely at that table. And if it does materialise and there is a financial hit for us, we will come back to the board, and I'm sure each health board will be going back to Scottish Government once they have the final numbers.
Thank you for that. I don't see any further hands for Morag's report, so I will move on to 5.4, the strategic planning group. I'll go to Andrew for an update on that one.
Hi, thanks. Many of the activities we've been doing are actually in Morag's report, so I won't take time to repeat them because they're actually covered there. For example, citizens panel and performance framework and public engagement plan, etc. The only thing I would flag is a sort of general point around some of the conversation we've had is about the uncertain world we're in terms of financially and complexity of our demand coming forward, and that is quite difficult, particularly as some of the national validated data has significant time lags on it, and our ability to respond to that in time in order to make corrections if we need to is quite challenging. I'll just leave that with you. We are looking at it in the group how we can do that, how we can get around that and try and intervene, but it is an ongoing issue for us, and that was really all I was going to say.
Thank you, Andrew. I will move on to 5.5, Audit and Risk Committee Chair. Val, have you got anything to add?
Well, I'm always going to get a bit confused whether it's the March one or the one that we've just had. In the March one, I think I've already updated this. I don't know whether it's supposed to be when the minutes are agreed, but the March one we had we approved the internal audit plan, and the external audit plan was approved. I think I've probably already reported that to the IJB, and we had the Audit and Risk Committee last week. I think it was just last week. And you note from the comments earlier that Audit Scotland did a presentation, which was interesting, challenging, sort of probably raised more questions than answers in many ways, but sort of gave us, I suppose, a bit of assurance that the things that we're doing are going in the right direction, largely. But we also discussed the reserve policy. and the review for the reserve policy. And again, I spoke with Audit Scotland about that too, because it was one of their recommendations. But that'll be coming back to the IJB for sign off in the future. So that'll be over to you, Conor, I believe. So that's all from me just now. Thanks.
Perfect. Thank you, Val. Okay, in the absence of any questions, I will move on to items for decision. Items for decision, the first one that's coming up is 5.6, Midlothian IGB Draft Annual Accounts 25-26, and I'll go to Chris for this one.
Thank you. So yeah, the paper today presents the draft on unaudited accounts for 24-25. So as with previous years, there's really 3 stages to this process. So we're at stage 1, so draft accounts are published by the end of June. We then get an external audit on the contents, and then the final accounts are signed off and published end of September typically. As you can see from the paper, the draft accounts are structurally complete. However, there's a couple of elements that are incomplete, which is largely in the performance section. And this is because we're still waiting for validated data from Public Health Scotland. This will be put into the annual accounts once the publication of the APR is ready, which is in July. We've spoke to external audit about it and they're happy with this approach. There are a couple other elements in the accounts I want to draw your attention to. So for me, this is absolutely the biggest, which is operationally, the IGB incurred a significant in-year overspend last year. So while this position was anticipated and we communicated clearly with partners throughout the year, unfortunately, the reality is that there was year-end contributions required from both partners. So the overspend equated to 7.9 million, and that was split across health and social care. So it was 2.9 million that we needed from NHS Lothian and 4.9 million from Midlothian Council. I think it's really important to note that these contributions are fully in line with our integration scheme, which clearly states that overspends are met by the respective partners. Now, I fully appreciate this will sound repetitive, but again, these final numbers, for me, completely highlight that the unsustainable nature of our current financial model. With a slightly more positive lens on though, the draft accounts went to audit and risk last week. They were supported. There was a couple of minor adjustments requested to the management commentary. I suppose the big one for noting is just to put a little bit more around the enablers for our future plans, so workforce, finance, digital, etc. These adjustments aren't included in the set of accounts that you've got in front of you, largely because of the timing issues of when papers need to go out. In addition, there's a big gap in the draft accounts just now, which will be filled by the annual governance statement. So again, timing issue here, but the annual governance statement went to audit and risk last week and was approved by the group. So they will also be put into the accounts before they're published. And the last bit at this point, so the board are asked to consider the draft, recognising its current status and approve its publication, with delegated authority given to the Chief Officer to meet the 30th of June statutory deadline.
Okay, thank you. Has anyone got any questions for Chris on this report? I appreciate many members will have seen it already at Audit and Risk, but anyone that perhaps isn't on the committee have any questions? Not seeing any hands. It is a report for decision, so I'll take nods as acceptance, hands as anyone that wants to object. Okay, happy with that. There you go, you've got off lightly, Chris. That's a new thing there. Okay, we'll move on to items for discussion, and noting from the beginning of the meeting, 5.7 and 5.9 we will take at the end. So I'll jump forward to 5.8, Midlothian IGB finance update, and we'll go straight back to Chris. I'm sure he's going to be all sunshine and rainbows this time. Not sure. We'll go to Chris.
It's typical. The time I can't get off mute is when I've got something positive to say. Yes, so the paper on the finance update really tries to outline the approach to developing the medium-term financial strategy that we touched on a little bit earlier on. So this strategy is a really critical tool for us. So it's going to help ensure that we maintain financial stability, sustainability, and strategic clarity over the next 3 to 5 years. So really, the aim is to set out how we try and manage the financial pressures. So this includes demographic change, growth, and any workforce constraints that we have. Another important factor here is the strategy will be fully aligned to our strategic plan. So it'll really help provide the framework to underpin our directions and our delivery. So following the 25-26 budget setting process, we're now entering a review and refresh phase. So this presents an opportunity to really strengthen that alignment between a financial plan and a strategic plan. And again, it ensures our financial decisions are targeted, transparent, and sustainable. It also allows us to enhance our governance, develop a reserve strategy, and engage more meaningfully with stakeholders about the difficult choices the IGB is going to face over that same time period. So the development of the strategy is going to be led by myself and Jill as the integration manager, but we'll have input from a whole host of different stakeholders and key partners. The proposal is for the draft MTFS to be reviewed by Strategic Planning Group in July, with it then coming back to the board in August. That timeline might be a little bit optimistic just now. I think once we get into the nuts and bolts of this, we'll have a better understanding of how long it'll take to come back with a really meaningful document. And in terms of the ask to the group, it was just to note the requirement of the review and support the plan to enable this work to progress.
Perfect. Thank you, Chris. Has anyone got any questions for Chris on this? I think finances are very well versed. Oh no, I'm wrong. We've flown right in with hands. Val, I'll go to you first.
Yeah, thanks very much, Chair. Chris, thanks very much for this. I think it's really good to see this almost strategy laid out and framework laid out. So very welcome. It's only a minor thing really, but I just wondered if there should be more in it around the transformation agenda. I know transformation has been mentioned, but I just wondered if, because we're going to be putting so much effort into transformation, I wonder if that should have had a higher profile there. Now, I suppose what I had written down in my notes, transformation and agility, being able to be fluid around things depending on, what you find when you're exploring and developing different ways of working. But it's just a comment, really. I'm not going to cry into my cornflakes if you don't put big changes in there, but it was just a thought because I know it's very much around the agenda at the minute. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Val. I'll go, Chris, you want to come back on that one?
Yeah, if that's okay. So Val, you're absolutely right. Transformation is a huge part of our future planning, and it may not have been heavily referenced in that paper, but when we come back with the fuller strategy, it will be the crux of it. And what we'll try and do is map it through.
Perfect. Thank you, Chris. I'll go to Andrew.
Yeah, no, thanks. And yeah, agree. Good to see this as it develops. I suppose I've got a slight anxiety as we're in the middle of this year. We had an overspend last year, and I'm thinking, how are we going to make sure we don't have an overspend this year? And I appreciate the strategy is part of that, but we don't have much time. And if we're saying it's not going to be done for another few months, that's going to be almost halfway through the year. So our ability to rein back activities, you've kind of lost half your time to do it. So I suppose the question I'm asking is, how confident, Chris, are you that we can maintain financial control within the current budget at this time? And do you have all the levers you need to do that?
Yeah, so I think, again, very fair question. There's still two strands to this, unfortunately. So we will still be battling just that ongoing financial recovery in the short term. But actually what this paper is trying to propose is actually, we're going to have to keep our eye on that, but we need to look forward as well. We're stuck in this cycle just now where I'm coming back to the board, or whoever the CFO is coming back to the board in March with a huge recovery programme, but it's only ever for 12 months. So then you're just in this never-ending cycle. So it's trying to lift our gaze. In terms of the challenge this year and the assurance, we don't have sort of substantive numbers yet for 25-26. I think by the end of the month, we'll know, we'll get the first sort of in-year projection. And then at that point, we're going to have to try and come up with the mitigating actions. And Andrew, I'm sorry, I can't give you assurance either way on that just now because I don't know what those numbers are.
I do appreciate that, Chris. I'm asking the scary question because I kind of feel I have to.
Yeah, I think it has to be recognised that challenge, as much as we managed to eradicate it on paper through the sort of favourable allocations we got from partners and the recovery programme we've put forward, we might still be left with an overspend when that first projection comes through. So we will need to respond. You're absolutely right.
Thank you. Morag, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, just to come in the back of Chris, Andrew as well. So you're right, we can't give assurance because we just don't know just now, but we've got as much on paper and practice that we can do around that. I guess just to reinforce, the biggest financial risk for us is around our resource panel, as you know from us talking last year as well. And you just don't know what's coming in there. And as you said, or as I've said before, the trends are around increasing elderly people who have actually coped for long periods of time and genuinely do need support there, and volume. So volume, demand and complexity, as you know, as well. The other thing though, last year we saw quite a lot of increase, like significantly high cost packages. I keep saying significantly, I need to stop doing that. You know, packages that are anything between 150 to 350,000 pounds. And again, we reported an inability, sometimes these things just come in tomorrow, for example, as well. What the team have done is a real focused piece of work on our current packages that are above 150k, and we've managed to bring some of these down. So that's positive moving into this year as well. And again, you'll remember the work we've done around the resource panel. So Fiona led the piece of work around 600 package of care reviews. We've completely updated, revised how the resource panel works, the processes that behind that, the spend against that. And Chris and Fiona and Jill are developing a kind of digital reporting dashboard around how to get a more live and agile kind of view of what the resource panel spend. Now, it'll never be 100% accurate because obviously invoices come in late and whatever, but really trying to map out what's agreed and therefore what are we potentially projecting. So that piece of work will be done over the summer. It's not going to get us into an absolute place where we can give you definite assurance, but it'll get us closer to the quarterly reporting that we get just now. So again, a lot of work around that. You'll note again last year, just around that package review, we saved £750,000 on that as well. So I'm hoping again that we will see the benefits of the changes that we made last year and possibly in a less bad position with resource panel, but it is the biggest area of concern.
Thank you, Morag. I don't see any further hands, so I will move on, and keeping in mind we're jumping over 5.9 till the end, so move to 5.10, the Midlothian Unscheduled Care Workstream Update. This is a presentation from Morag. Is Democratic Services? Yes. Didn't even have to ask the question. Okay, hand over to Morag.
Thank you very much. So yet again, unfortunately, you have me presenting on the update. Grace Cowan isn't with us just now. And I just want to acknowledge Debbie Creerer, who's the service manager now, who is running our unscheduled care programme, has prepared these slides, and a lot of the work that you'll see progress has been as a result of Debbie. So I'll do my best to represent the slides, and happy again to take any questions at the end. So we can go to the next slide, please. Okay, so again, you'll be aware from me presenting over the last 2 or 3 meetings, the focus of the unscheduled care work has really been about us focusing on the back door of the hospital. So that's the terminology used around trying to get people out of hospital, and particularly around delayed discharges, and making sure again that we've got systems in place to identify people in hospital earlier. And then plan appropriate discharge. So maximising capacity around that supported discharge process. So this has really seen that more than 50% people are supported by our discharge assess team. So that's the team that go into hospital, identify people that could pull out, put a little bit of rehabilitation in and care in, and actually manage the last part of their journey, if you like, within the community environment and indeed their own home. And we've seen 50% in additional capacity in that team in the last 3 months through some of the work that we've been doing there. Through the work we're doing with partners, which is Edinburgh, East Lothian and acute services, we have seen across all of the partnerships a reduction in our delays. So the backdoor performance, as I say, has had a significant improvement. Please stop me saying significant. Has had a huge improvement in the number of delays. But what we're not seeing is that translating into bed reduction and anywhere getting near that bed capacity target. And we're actually, through this piece of work, seeing that the biggest influencer around this is admissions behaviour, culture and processes within the emergency department. So some of us around the table would have said, well, there's no surprise there. We've been saying that for years. But this piece of work, again, has allowed us to actually eliminate some of the myths around this piece of work and actually really get down to where is the challenge. And if I can give you an example of last weekend where partnership delays were pretty low, so there were beds available. The 4-hour target in ED hadn't been breached and there were beds available. So again, it's more, we believe, around maintaining that improved flow at the back door, but actually a real focus on how we change that culture and process and behaviour with people who are responsible for admitting the patients from the emergency department. Next slide, please. Next slide's a little bit busy, so again, we can send these out if you don't have this in your pack as well. These were the initiatives that we originally focused on within our plan. So again, most of these you'll have had updates with me previously. So we got an initial benefit by going to one of our really stable external providers around additionality of care at home hours. So initially 400 hours of external care in my home were procured with another 160, and that supported just under 30 people and a rolling 30 people in terms of that additional reduction in weights for packages of care. Again, in terms of the care at home infrastructure, so you'll know that we have 3 external providers and an internal care at home service as well. So again, really working hard internally to speed up some of our internal processes, bring in additional quality assurance and speed up the whole review process, in particular in environmental assessments, which can again add to people being delayed within a hospital setting. Working with our sector partners, we have a contract with the British Red Cross, who work as part of our discharge planning team to try to provide people or to get people out of hospital on the same day where transport could be an issue, or our teams can't necessarily respond on the day of discharge but can actually the next again day. And some of that stuff is around, again, transporting the patient home themselves, about making sure that the patient is safe and comfortable at home, the heating works, they've got food in their fridge and so on as well, with the reassurance again that our statutory teams, if you like, will be in the next again day. And then again, in the first 6 weeks, 29 people were supported to get home at least a day earlier via that British Red Cross pathway. So it's in its infancy just now, and again, we'll report back that future sessions around this. In terms of hospital at home, again, you'll be aware we've had hospital at home team in Midlothian for some years now. Capacity had reduced in that, partially due to fixed term Scottish Government funding finishing, and partly due to absence and just vacancy control as well. We have now got another 2 advanced nurse practitioners within that team. They started 2 weeks ago, and the plan will be to increase, it says, from 15 to 21 beds. 3 or 4 weeks ago it was 10 beds we had, so we'll be moving up to 21 beds, so it's pretty much 100% additional capacity. And the other area that we focus a lot of work in is around our social work capacity, particularly our in-reach team. So that's our social work team that go into the hospitals and support the planning to get people home again. We had a fairly small team in there, and we've had investment into in these teams to speed up that process and see a significant improvement in terms of the day 2 assessment and fewer delays around that as well. I will say that as part of our overall funding allocation, as you know, we received 2.2 million, which is non-recurring for this year. But with other partners in Lothian, if we can demonstrate that we can sustain an improvement and we make the targets, then Scottish Government have committed to provide that on a recurring basis. So out of the 2.2 million that we've been allocated, 1.7 million has been allocated to social care parts of our services in Midlothian, because that's where a lot of our gaps were as well. So, you know, quite a chunk going into the social care elements of our systems. Next slide, please. So as with the kind of fixed pieces of work we've said, obviously a lot of discussion and planning and focus around the things that support these happening and the enablers. A lot of this stuff, again, won't be new to you, but again, a lot of evidence coming out around the unscheduled care programme work to focus our attention on these. A lot of it across the system is human factors and human elements of why things work certain ways, and they've always worked that way, so that's the way we do it. And again, some of the data that we've managed to pull together on this has demonstrated that where thoughts in the system were around where the challenges were, i.e. delayed discharges, in actual fact that is not proven to be the case. So whilst there again, as there has been improvement in delays, and that certainly is a contributor to it, there now is a much bigger focus on the front door and on the emergency department as well. I think though, where the teams who are working on this have moved away from silo working, so I think when it was a focus on the HSCPs not working hard enough or not being fast enough or whatever, it became quite siloed and quite defensive. And I think each of the areas kind of stood their own, and it was either our fault or it was acute's fault or whatever it was. What we've actually seen now is true coming together as a system. And, you know, the HSCPs will be, you know, even if it's an acute identified problem, the HSCPs are working with acute to work through these processes and vice versa. So it's a very different way of working. And Val, you did bring this up at the last presentation I did. I said, what's different now? Why is it working now? Why did we not do it before? And, you know, ultimately the potential finance around this, given the you know, financial challenges we all have, was the big driver there as well as obviously patient safety and patient experience. But it definitely has generated a different way of working with all partners sitting around the table and all sharing this as a potential problem and a potential solution as well. And data, again, the level of data that we now see around this, which is commissioned on behalf of the Unscheduled Care Working Group, again, is so much more than we've been able to see before again, and it's enabled us to get to some of these more tricky parts of discussion, again, that we've probably avoided as a system before. Next slide, please. So in terms of the impact to date, next slide, please. So the impact to date, just to give you a bit of an idea of where we are just now. So our delayed discharges have reduced. So today, our social delays in acute sides are 14. So that's across St John's, the Royal Infirmary and the Western, with another 3 in Midlothian Hospital. So for the purpose of the Scottish Government reporting, then 14, and I would say we were sitting, as you know, before, probably about 30. More importantly, our health delays, so that's people that are medically fit but still need some additional rehab or something like that and not quite ready to go home yet, they would generally come to Midlothian Hospital or Highbank, which is our intermediate care facility. They were sitting in their 30s at the beginning of the year. They are now down today to 2. So significant improvement. Again, I've said it again, sorry. A really, really good improvement in terms of our delayed performance. Looking at some other measures, again, early days around this, and if Jill was here, she would talk about, is it normal variation or is it actually sustained change? Which is a fair point to make. Our total occupied bed days for our over 75s have reduced by 10% already, and our unscheduled care total occupied bed days have reduced by 15%. So good improvements being noted just now. And as I said earlier on, 50% more supported discharges by our discharge to assess pathway between January and April. So already really, really good improvements being made and being noticed. Next slide, please. However, one of our targets around this for Midlothian is to an 85% bed occupancy. For us, would look at us using 115 beds. And we see a huge amount of variation in that during the week, whereby our delayed discharges position ends up in a really strong position at the end of the week, and then we come in on Monday and our bed occupancy is right back up there again. And again, you know, it feels, and the evidence is now showing this, that as soon as the partnerships empty a bed, then it's filled again as well. And what we're also seeing as a system is quite a lot of an increase around our short-term stays. And the question that I have around that is that these people need to be admitted? Is it around the 4-hour target, or is it, as I say, cultures, processes and so on around just traditional ways of working around the ED department? So although we're freeing up beds, we're still seeing them being filled as well. So again, the group are focusing on that moving forwards. Andrew, you mentioned the last presentation, it's great that we're seeing this flow improving, that people are moving faster through the system, but is there a danger of risk or adverse effects with that? And we have checked, and there is no change to our readmission rates. We've checked that on the basis of your question last time. There's no increase in complaints relating to that, and there's no increase in any incident recording according to this as well. So we're seeing a better patient journey, a lot shorter stays in hospital, but no adverse events at this point in time relating to the changes around that. So I thought it'd be important that you know that. One of the things that I am in discussion with the group about just now from Midlothian is that Midlothian patients generally were always admitted to the Royal Infirmary. Edinburgh patients could go either way. East and Mid generally were Midlothian just because of our geography around people going to the Western. Clearly there are people that need to go to specialities in the Western, and that will always be the case. But the business as usual was Mid and East patients would always go to the Royal Infirmary, and Edinburgh would then split. Because of a situation where the system was very hot in the Royal Infirmary 4 or 5 weeks ago, the Unscheduled Care Group made a decision to take that divert off. So now quite a lot of our patients who are routine patients that don't need to be seen by specialists in the Western are sitting in the Western. And as of today, I have 93 people waiting or using beds in the Royal Infirmary and 47 in the Western. Now, to contextualise that for you, we probably have 100 in the Royal Infirmary and maybe 20 in the Western. That's an issue for me, that whilst I'm very, very supportive of it from a patient safety perspective, when capacity in the Royal is not there and there's capacity in the Western, we have to look at that. But for us to manage these patients in the Western, and for patients, families and so on trying to get in and out there, it's a challenge for us. And I have spoken to the Deputy Chief Exec around that divert being re-looked at. So there's a meeting on Monday with colleagues from Edinburgh who want to re-look at a pathway for patients that have a physical situation but have dementia. Currently, these patients from Edinburgh go to the Royal Infirmary and then they get transferred to the Western. Consultants in the Western and Edinburgh are very keen that that admission just goes straight to the Western. And there's enough of these people that would mean then that they could go to the Western and our patients could stay in Midlothian. So I'm still staying fairly strong in the fact that that divert needs to be considered. We can't have that many in the Western because it means that our staff can't support these as much and our performance will start to drop. So we're on that. And again, I'll report back on where we get to with that. Next slide, please. So in terms of next steps, it's really embedding some of the stuff we've talked about again. So we now have all the additional posts in at Care at Home, and we are just finalising and changing some of the processes, and they'll be in place by about now, mid-June, I was told. Hospital at Home, again, as I said, will increase their beds by 100%. That will be the 16th of June. We are also developing, we've agreed an InReach model. So that's a group, a sort of multidisciplinary group of staff that will go and work within the acute hospitals, seeking out Midlothian patients and safely moving them out to our community teams as quick as possible. So we've agreed a model for that. We've agreed the recruitment, and that is now just working through recruitment. So that is likely to come on board towards the end of the summer. Again, we are wanting to look at our flow within Midlothian Hospital. We now have a weekly day of care audit. So that's really where every single patient within our rehab pathways at the hospital gets reviewed by a team, a kind of objective team to say, do they need to be here? They are then highlighted to our flow team, and then we can look to see again who we can move out as there. So that used to be done once every quarter. That's now kind of routine business as usual practice. It's done on a weekly basis. And we also have the same in place every week with acute colleagues looking at the Royal Infirmary in the Western as well. So again, another good output of that was these tended to be standalone pieces of work. They're now routine business as usual discharge planning. And again, we've talked about data quite a lot as well, really just to continue to use data to inform our decision making, to refine our KPIs, whether that's part of the Lothian wide work or whether that's local KPIs as well, to ensure that we are continually reviewing what we think we've, or what we know we've put in place, and do we need to learn to fail fast and make changes there. So again, just that continual review. Next slide, please. And the next one again, please. So I've talked about this. This is just a summary. You've seen this slide from previous updates. So again, as of today, our actual performance bed-wise this morning is 139. It has been as low as I think about 120 over previous months or thereabouts. But again, as I said to you, it's not correlating with a reduction in delayed discharges. So as I've said to you frequently, it's about focusing on that front door and changing that admission tolerance or that risk tolerance around admission. Next slide, please. And again, this is a slide just again that talks you through the bed occupancies. This is a point in time at the end of May. Our performance was pretty strong, as you can see from that as well. Midlothian is the green line, and the grey line, the flat line across the top, is the target. So you can see that we're all moving closer to the target. There's still a bit of variation in there as well. A little bit further away from that today, but that's more to do with on Monday we had 27 admissions to the Royal Infirmary, and on a normal day we would see about 10. So again, links back to that front door piece of work that needs to be done. Next slide, please. And again, the next slide just talks to you or demonstrates what I've talked to you about as well, about the reduction in social delays across both sites, and again the sort of slow and steady reduction in health delays. Health delays have seen a huge improvement in June, so that obviously will take you to, I think it's can't see that, I think it's the end of May there as well. So when you see the next update again, you'll see that drop again there. So a really strong performance from the team. Further improvement to make. You know that we've got the Home First review, which will be due to report the new model at the end of the month. And again, Claire and Debbie are assuring us that there's again further capacity by adopting different ways of working within our local teams, as well as this overlapped unscheduled care funding. For the second part of the presentation, it's around the general practice frailty local enhanced service update. So Rebecca's going to take you through these slides, and then happy to open up for either of us for questions.
Okay, thank you. So next slide, please. So as part of the unscheduled care flow bid to the Scottish Government, there was an agreement amongst the group to prioritise some funding into primary care to support this work upstream and to prevent admissions. So we were aiming to assess a third of the older people in the population for an assessment of their frailty, and then those that were identified as frail, aiming for 90% of those people to have harm mitigations in place in the form of a polypharmacy review, and to plan and predict for medical crises or deteriorations by doing future care planning. So ultimately aiming to reduce A&E attendances and unscheduled admissions by at least 10%. So we have a bed target for primary care as well as part of this piece of work. So next slide, please. So this is a Lothian-wide piece of work. It just doesn't just apply to Midlothian, but all of our practices in Midlothian are taking part in the enhanced service. So it's based on 4 layers, as I just described. The first is around engagement and education and training for staff. Tier 2 is around assessing patients for frailty and developing a frailty register. Tier 3 is those crucial interventions that I just talked about. And Tier 4 is the opportunity to do further innovative or transformative tests of change to really help the learning and decide where we go next with this piece of work. Next slide, please. So the key interventions are aiming at the people with moderate to severe frailty. So this is just an example. This is the criteria as part of the enhanced service contract that we're asking GPs to do. So really get this key information and actions in place so that when patients hit medical crisis and might have interaction with other parts of the system, whether that be 999, SAS, whether it be NHS 24, whether it be the hospital front door, that they really benefit from a GP's much greater, deeper knowledge of the patient with that continuity of care. And we've shared what we know about the patient with other parts of the system to help prevent admissions when appropriate. Next slide, please. So progress in Midlothian so far. So this is since the 1st of April, which is when the enhanced service start. So in Midlothian alone, we've done 2,361 frailty assessments, and we have done future care planning for 629 people who are coded as frailty score 6+, i.e. moderate to severe frailty. And I've done polypharmacy reviews for 474 of those. So interesting, despite what Morag said about the issue in the wider system and not progressing to the bed target being around admissions, what we know is it's not admissions that come in via GP that's the problem. See on the run chart there, the GP flow centre and out of hours GP admissions for the over 65s have seen a trend downwards since the 1st of April. It's fair to say that that's possibly not all just the impact of this piece of work, because about the same time the flow centre brought in clinicians in as part of their decision making as well to reduce admissions, but they use the information that we're providing on the ECASE, and we provide the frailty score on our referral documents to them as well. So I think that's the last of the slides. Maybe want to take them down. I'll pass back to Morag for questions.
Thank you,
Okay.
Rebecca.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that presentation. Has anyone got any questions for Morag or Rebecca on the presentation? Not seeing any immediate hands. I think it was quite conclusive. Andrew?
I just think to say well done on quite an incredible piece of work, because actually we are seeing impact here, and I think that's just, for some of us, we've always felt we could never make any impact, and I think that's just such a powerful thing. So well done, I think, on that. I mean, there's a whole pile of stuff in it. It's such a comprehensive presentation. I'm really grateful for all of that. The couple of points from me, I suppose, were, Morag, you talked a lot about the things that have been having an impact. I'm just keen that we just protect those and some of the difficult decisions about finance we're going to have, so we don't do what we've done in the past, like care hospital at home, where we would begin to reduce spending on that, only then to have to turn around and start increasing it again. So I think it's like, what are the critical points in the system we've got to hold on to, regardless of what, well, not quite regardless, but you know what, in the face of difficult decisions. The element a bit, you talked a bit about the front door, managing people coming in the front door, and the assessments there. I'm also interested to know what work is coming on around that, because that obviously is quite an important bit, and so just a bit of understanding around that. And then I suppose, Rebecca, on the last bit there where we talked about people coming through, I suppose, the flow centre and GPs, are we capturing over 65s that are not coming necessarily through that, are just turning up at the front door and maybe coming out, so that we're capturing people in that situation to make sure they are being kind of looked after through by their GPs in that process, and not sort of going out with that process? I'm conscious that, when you ring up your GP, you do get the response that they're very, very busy and they may not get back to you during the time. And if you really are still needing care and you're very worried about it, you're encouraged to turn up at A&E. So as many people, I imagine, will get that message and will do that. So 3 questions there. Sorry, a bit rambly.
Yeah, I'm happy to come in the first 2 and then Rebecca hopefully in the third. So you're right, I guess, in terms of protecting the services that actually start to make an impact. As you know, that this is ring-fenced funding in Midlothian. We've tried to look at it across the board. So although the money's come into health, we've looked at where are our big challenges around flow, and hence the investment in the social care elements of our integrated models. I guess in principle I agree with you, but depending on where we get to financially, then we'll be bringing things back to the board for decisions. And I wouldn't like to see the work from this not being carried on. But, you know, if we end up in a situation that is not good, then everything is up for discussion and decision making on behalf of the board, Andrew. So it goes back to your previous question with Chris around assurances around how we don't get ourselves in a bad financial position, or, you know, so I support you in principle, but we'll just have to see where that goes, I guess. In terms of the front door, so I would say probably it's maybe only the last 6-7 weeks that again the focus has been on actually the data showing it's more that's the problem. And I think, like anything, it's a combination of things though. So there's looking at leadership around front door teams and even combinations of teams. They're looking again at process changes and triggers and KPIs and the impact of the 4-hour target, and so on as well. And I suppose again that continual visibility and presence in ED by the appropriate people, and the monitoring and reporting back to Unscheduled Care Board as well. So it's probably a combination of nothing that will sound like rocket science around it, but, you know, a lot of these things just challenging traditional practice. You know, so again, we'll report back in that. It's early days, I guess, Andrew, around some of that work, but definitely a focus on that. We'll see a change in the bed occupancy, which is what we need, and hopefully in a good position moving into winter as well. Rebecca, are you happy to take Andrew's third question?
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. So just a point of clarification around the safe working message that GPs are using when they reach capacity now. So the message, the agreed message that has been approved within Lothian by the Deputy Medical Director does not say go to A&E if you can't speak to your GP. It gives people signposting advice and encourages them to explore other options only if they cannot wait or cannot find the resource elsewhere. So it does not say go to A&E. And since that working message has been introduced, we have very carefully monitored the attendance at ED rate for all patients, not just this frail elderly group, but for all patients, and there has been no impact over time from attendance in May at the point that safe working message was put in place in local practices. So it's really about safety and safeguarding staff, signposting patients to the right resources. For that doesn't include A&E, unless obviously they're having an MI or a stroke or whatever. In terms of very valid point, I think I'll be monitoring what's happening to patients who choose to go to A&E and are not coming through GP services. So the EKIS and special notes future care planning that we write is available to SAS 999 crews. They can see it if they're attending a patient at home. And if the patient just self-presents at the front door, also available to ED frontline clinicians. So again, should still have the same admission avoidance strategies, and mitigations might not prevent some patients turning up at ED if they feel that is the other option for them, but the admission avoidance should still be a benefit.
Thank you. Andrew, do you want to come back on that one?
So just on the last point, it'd be good to know that that is actually operating, I suppose. I mean, just in when you're looking at the data, to understand that if people that sort of process is happening as effectively through the flow system as well as through the other different things, and then that people are then captured back by their GP as well, and then kind of so that we avoid that situation. But anyway, I'm into the details, so I'm sure you're on it, Rebecca. So
thank you. Yeah, and I know as well, just off the back of that, the different pathways they're offering for GPs now. I met with Pennycook GP practice. They were talking about how Pharmacy First has been a really helpful tool. I've used it myself and it is actually fantastic. So to promote that kind of thing is really important, because people don't assume that their pharmacist can help them with such things. And when I went, they were absolutely fantastic. It was just as what a GP would have done if I'd managed to get an appointment. So they are really handy. And now I think in Midlothian, every town has an independent pharmacist, and all of them seem to be doing a fantastic job. So yeah, no, it's a great service. Moving on, I'll go to Val next, please.
Thanks, Conor. Just a couple of things. Really, really good presentation. You know, I've been skeptical about this work to some extent, because I just really want to sort of feel and see the progress, rather than sometimes us congratulating ourselves for getting together. So I can now see it, and it's being described and it's evidence. So that's really good. So a couple of comments for me. I really like the idea of the weekly day of care audit, and I think that's the kind of thing that's getting traction. So whoever thought of doing that on that kind of regular basis, well done. I think we just need to continue with this. You know what I'm going to say? We just need to continue with it. An observation, Morag, on the success enablers. There's 8 of them there. I would say at least 7, if not 6 of them are soft enablers rather than hard enablers as we understand the world. And I think that's to be noted, embraced, and to be replicated in terms of behaviours, culture, etc. as we go forward. So the data one I'm kind of leaving out. The rest of them I would almost put in a soft category. Soft sometimes implies not effective or not concrete or really worth giving the same kind of attention to, which would obviously be the opposite to the way I would see the world. And the last thing I would say, and this is just for consideration, I mean, really, I mean, I know I've had this conversation with you, but it does beg the question in your unscheduled care group, however often you meet 2 or 3 times a week still, whether or not there is challenge to the Scottish Government about resetting or changing, you know, getting rid of the 4-hour target, basically, but resetting other targets. And I don't mind if you take that back from the IJB as a point for consideration, because I think it has created over the years so many behaviours that are now being evidenced as actually not helpful. So is there something else we could do that might be more community facing, would be my challenge. Thanks, Morag. Thanks, Chair.
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to take that back to the group. There has been a bit of discussion. I don't think anything formal's gone back yet around that, obviously 'cause it's still early days, but certainly that's a factor, as you say. In it, there's a bit of discussion again around whether we almost have a kind of an in-reach unit that sits aside ED as well, so that people can be going, appropriate people can go and be managed in that unit, which takes away that challenge around I have to admit because it's 3 hours 59 minutes. So I'm very happy again just to kind of keep adding that to discussion, Val, and feedback to yourself and the board on that.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll go on to Keith now, please.
Thanks very much, Connor. Yeah, most of what I was actually going to say has been covered, so I'll just reiterate some. Firstly, Val's point about the soft stuff, that is the major change that has occurred, it seems to have occurred to me, you know, and I think it's so important that it's embraced, because, you know, when at the start of all this, you know, there was so much stuff about it's your fault, it's your fault, it's your fault, you know, and to have changed that, you know, it seems so important to me. So provide that leadership and that seeing this as one vision for everyone. So, you know, I really should commend you on doing that, because to me, it seems what integration is all about. The 4-hour target, you know, I have always thought it is nonsense. So I would thoroughly, when it was introduced on the basis that it will produce system-wide change. It did no such thing. And it should be, I've always said it should be dropped, and I would heartily endorse that. It did not produce system change. It produced the appointment of vast numbers of A&E consultants. And my final thing is about the ECAS, and it's very good to hear that that's now actually been resourced, because there was a very good study done in Murray about 15 years ago or something like that, that showed that putting more information there for everyone to see from a GP that knows the patient helped to make, you know, provide better decision making. So I'd be very much in favour of trying to retain that. I accept your point, Rebecca, that we don't know quite how much of that reduction is just due to that and how much is due to other actions that are going on that you've described, Maureen. But, you know, there is good evidence that actually helps. So that would be something I'm keen for us to continue. Thank you.
I think if I can come in, Chair, as well, I think so. Val and Keith, you're absolutely right. The softer stuff is a lot of the thing that's actually made the change. The teams are working together in a very different way now, which is fantastic to see. you know, very supportive of each other. The blame element is not there. It's how can we work together to make this better, and that's really, really good to see. And again, I suppose, and going back to the mental health work, which is it's following the same route, if you like. There's an awful lot of stuff we can lift and learn from the unscheduled care work that we can put into the planning around mental health. That's probably taken unscheduled care 6-8 months to get there, but actually what are the enablers learning that we can put in place to support a quicker redesign of mental health, in particular in beds as well. So that will be picked up and used to our advantage across our mental health work. But thank you for that.
Thank you. I don't see any further hands. I'm assuming that was a mistake, Morag. I'll move on now to 5.11, which is prevalence and management of type 2 diabetes in Midlothian. I have down Fiona Kennedy, but I'm aware that Jim Sherville is here as well, so please indicate who I'm going to. Jim is taking off his mic. Yeah, cool.
Yes.
Okay, I'll go to Jim.
Much to Fiona's relief. Thanks very much, Chair. So just wanted to acknowledge this is a paper that Morag was keen to come here, I think, just to give IJB members a sense of the issue, the prevalence and incidence, and also the service response and some of the prevention activities going on. I think in part, I think Morag, I maybe let you say something at the end, but you know, there is a new Lothian group together, which I know you're involved with, replacing the region that used to. There was a regional approach taken, just that got massively disrupted by the pandemic, and some of the prevention work that's in the paper actually started, you know, 2019, 2018, and people who were around then will remember, you know, Myri Simpson and others, you know, sort of trying to set up a whole systems approach to tackling type 2 diabetes, and it did get very sort of disrupted, but I'm pleased to say we have completed some of that work that had begun then, at least the first round, you know, the first iteration of it. So you'll be very aware it's an enormous health issue, and has a big impact on health and the health of our population, and a big impact on our budgets as well. And I tried to do there's a number of estimates. I think, you know, Chris could probably, you know, do a quick Google and find, you know, 6 to 10% of the budget, you know, can end up being spent on diabetes care. Now, some of that's routine, you know, a good chunk of it is the routine care that helps prevent complications, but quite a big chunk of it is on complications of diabetes, of which there are a number. And so it's something that basically 90% of the overall figure of people with diabetes is type 2 and very preventable, in that really frustrating way, because you know, the advice, you know, if you went to NHS Inform and had a quick look, which I did, I thought, I'll just see what they're saying, you know, and it's the classic, you know, lose weight if you're overweight, maintain a healthy weight, eat a balanced diet, stop smoking, alcohol in moderation, and move about a lot. You know, you know, I cannot fault that advice in many ways. And yet, why do we have rising obesity? Now, we don't fully understand why. I think there are some interactions that we don't maybe fully understand, but there's a very clear relationship with smoking. There's a very clear relationship with aging, and I think overall there's a very clear relationship, which was what the whole systems approach was to the environment, to the environment within which we live, our desire perhaps for convenience, and our desire for quick meals, and then also that interaction with poverty as well, and what we're able to afford to eat, so it's like all the issues that you've discussed so far today. It's quite a complicated one. There's a lot of interactions. So we have seen a rising prevalence, as you can see, and it's very related in terms of multiple deprivation, which will, as I say, have also have relationships with smoking prevalence, which is also very smoking related, and poverty. But we also have a rising, an aging population, and there is, people move less when they're older, perhaps spend more time at home, perhaps eat more. There's all sorts of behaviours which people just slip into very, very easily, habits and such like. So there is a range of issues and a range of areas that may be needing to target. My colleague Jack, who's put this together, has just highlighted the pre-diabetes issues as well. So people perhaps will go to, Rebecca with a few symptoms, or get picked up, a little bit with one of these tests that measures, your sort of 3-month sugar, and sort of like, and be told that actually your risk of diabetes is elevated, and that may be also to do with family history, but it's sort of one of those warning shots, and that can be very powerful. I'm sure she would say for some. I don't want to put words in your mouth, Rebecca. Maybe you'd like to say something at the end as well about the view from general practice. But it can be a powerful motivator for some, but it's sustaining the changes that you need. So it can be powerful in the short term, but how to sustain people's changes, and people go back to the environment that they're living in, and so it is difficult for when you individualize it all the time. I think that's what I'm trying to say. So we've got the paper. As you can see, there's quite a lot of detail about some of the services that are offered, and thanks to Claire's colleagues in dietetics and podiatry for contributing those. I'm hoping maybe Claire could cover any detailed questions about the services. Sorry, actually, yes, Jack would kill me if I didn't mention that she's done very well to get a little bit of non-recurring money from a couple of sources, just to look at the issue of weight bias and weight stigma, because I think there is, as I say, that individualization of health behavior and your presentation. You're overweight, you're obese, it's your fault, and that's just not a great place to start a conversation. But I think it's how a lot of people feel and feel they're perceived, and possibly, if some of us look inwards a bit, maybe we have some of those prejudices too, and it's just not going to help. Stigma doesn't usually help lead to enormous health gain in a population. So well done to Jack for getting that. It's very embryonic. It's about staff training. It's about, and it's exploratory at the moment around, well, what are the some of the challenges that post could address. So yes, sorry, I was going to finish, and then I just thought I'd better mention that because it's very innovative. I think there's 1 or 2 places around Scotland doing maybe 1 or 2 things, or are thinking about it, but Jack's got the money to actually do some work on that. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. Just a quick one from me, and then, or Morag, are you going to add to what Jim's saying, or is it? Because
No,
before
you
I
go
put in a
first.
question, right? Okay,
You go first.
just a quick one. I've asked this question before. It might be for Claire, but it's just there's more chat about it, and it may be interesting to see from public health perspective, what the deal is with it. But the weight loss medications and injections are growing exponentially in popularity. I know a lot of people that are using them, seeing benefits from them. The press are reporting very mixed about the use of them. So I suppose it would be good to sort of try and get public health point of view on them, because I know in the report it's got about like medical intervention, but it doesn't have any mention of the type or the trajectory of that use, and whether it's going to be considered sort of the norm going forward. I know there's discussions in Parliament about it, but it's just to see from your perspective, Jim or Claire.
Yeah, or it might be Rebecca has a perspective on this. Yes, we got under 3.33. You'll see that we put a very short line in there around the fact that they are on the formulary, so they're available to prescribe in theory. and there's a short life working group looking at how to best roll out the medicines in line with Scottish Government recommendations. It's not something I've been involved in, I'm afraid, Connor, so I would be quite reluctant to sort of dive in on this issue. So maybe Claire will be able to, I can see her hands up, be able to shine some light.
Of course, Jim, and thank you for the question, Connor. There's an extensive piece of work that Jim is referencing there in terms of what we're progressing through the short life working group. That is essentially been focused of late on the development of a shared care agreement. And that's essentially how you operationalise the use of drugs that have been added to the formulary. So we are almost at the approval stage of the shared care agreement. We had a positive meeting on Tuesday. We've a little virtual process to work through before we go to the next GP sub group around progressing that further. So in the meantime, we are developing the pathway across the service and considering the model that is required to support that, because our goal here is that we can support the population that are known to us, that are waiting for help and support around their weight loss journey from our weight management tier 2 and tier 3 services, with the goal that we can innovate that service to include the safe, effective provision of weight loss medications. We have the slight challenge in the sense that dietetics as a profession are not actually independent prescribers. So we're working in collaboration with our prescribing colleagues and some medical colleagues also for some oversight, so that we can have a safe pathway that will allow us to prescribe the medications alongside the other really important parts of that pathway, and that is lifestyle management, physical activity, etc. So the work is underway, Connor. As you'd expect, it is complex, but it is something that we will be coming back to both the strategic planning group and the IJB to update on in terms of where we are and what that will look like for the dietetic service, which, as you know, we host on behalf of NHS Lothian. Thanks, Connor.
Perfect, thank you, Claire. Rebecca, were you planning on coming in on that one? Yeah.
Just a very brief clarification, if it's helpful, since we're talking about diabetes. So these medications that you read about in the press, what we call GLP-1 medications, are on the formulary now in Lothian for specialist use only. So they can't widely be prescribed, but they can be prescribed by specialists. And the first line for prescribing them, actually, we can prescribe them for patients with diabetes. The issue about prescribing the same drugs for weight management is a little bit more complicated, as Claire describes. But where a patient is diabetic, these medications are very potent and great improvers of somebody's diabetic control, the weight issues aside.
Thank you. I will move on to Andrew.
If you allow me just to offer some observations, thank you, Chair. There is significant evidence around type 2 diabetes that when it's led and managed by multidisciplinary teams within primary care with extensive nursing involvement, they have the best record in terms of appropriate management and prevention of diabetes. I'm not sure the paper captures, from what I read, enough of that multidisciplinary approach at practice level in terms of management of diabetes and the unique role that practice nurses, diabetic community nurses can have within that. And there is lots of evidence around that, and I'm sure that will be taken into account. But my declaration of interest, I'm married to a diabetic primary care nurse specialist who manages significant volumes in collaboration with her GP partners, and they have some fantastic results. And I know that's the case across the board. So a note there that maybe that needs to be reflected just a little bit more.
Thank you, Andrew. I will go to Keith, please. Keith, I think you're on mute. You've managed to win that award to be the first person to do that.
Thank you, Conor. Yeah, just a few things. One's about pre-diabetes. I noticed that we're perhaps not capturing quite as many people in SIMD1, the lower SIMD people with pre-diabetes when you look at the graphs between people with diabetes and people with pre-diabetes. And I was wondering if we had any thoughts about how we might improve that a bit. I had another thing about, I was going to say about the weight biasing. Like you, Jim, I think it's very important. One of my neighbours who has had problems with obesity when she was about 8 or 9 was recently told by someone, because she's developed some diabetic complications, maybe you should have thought about your lifestyle, a bit earlier than this, an extremely unhelpful way to start a conversation. So that work is desperately needed. I'm sorry to say it was a doctor. Sorry, I had one other thing. Well, I was just going to say about the anti-obesity medicines. I happened to look at RefHelp the other day, and nobody's taking any referrals for the anti-obesity medications at the moment, as it so happens. Yeah, just a bit about pre-diabetes. Thanks.
Okay, and Rebecca.
The other thing is, sorry, just in relation to that, I'm just going to say, are we encouraging people, because you can self-refer to weight management, and I don't think that's something many people are well aware of. I just wondered if we were going to try and promote that as a way of trying to keep workload down for people, giving them clear guidelines, but also increasing access to weight management. Thanks.
Thank you, Keith. I'll go to Rebecca and then I'll go to Claire.
Yeah, thanks. Good question about the pre-diabetes and maybe lower SIMD. So, Keith, you're perhaps aware, so the big good news stories for primary care in terms of injection of cash that would have otherwise gone into the wider system this year was one, the unscheduled flow money that went into the frailty enhanced service. But the Scottish Government this year are also funding a primary care cardiovascular prevention enhanced service, nationwide piece of work, but providing funding for GPs to find patients in the 30 to 45 age group, but particularly the people who are hard to reach. So the missingness that would be before. And we're asked to look at 5 key markers of cardiovascular health, one of which is HbA1c. So trying to find those people with pre-diabetes and undiagnosed diabetes. So I hope that answers that. Question about referral to weight management. Sorry, Claire, I'm going to pass to you.
Thank you, Rebecca. Yeah, in terms of the, clearly we have a direction which is about enabling access and requests for assistance specifically. And so interestingly, Keith, the weight management service is the only part of the dietetic service which has a self-referral attached to it. And we were looking at the data just yesterday, and the range is generally between 3 and 5% of the referrals that are received are actually self-referral. And it lent us to the question of why might that be? So I guess as part of our review of our external facing comms, we're trying to enhance our offering, what's there, help people to wait well. So rather than have screeds of information that people just lose the will to live looking at, how do we have talking heads and things that are a little more dynamic and interesting to look at, and including the voice of the patient within that. So certainly our self-referral process will remain. We continue to promote that through those avenues, but certainly it is an observation that it's not something that's picked up often, and I wonder if that's about some of the unique challenges that this population have, and that actually they require a bit of help and support to get to the weight management service. It's a tricky one. I think I was going to pick up, if that's okay, Chair, just on a couple of the other points. It was back to the weight bias piece, and it was really interesting to learn that NHS Inform have also been reviewing the content of their web pages around weight loss and weight management, and some of the content there was quite concerning to read in terms of how it was referencing weight loss in a rather simplistic way. So I'm given the assurance that by the end of July, the new content will have gone live and also will be in an improved format for communities to access. And the last point, Keith, I think is also about the prevention agenda around diabetes, and it's back to the Chief Officer's report and the positive news story around ANIA. So that digital offering to support people virtually who have been identified as being pre-diabetic or perhaps are requiring support around remission as well. So there's some interesting developments nationally as well. Thanks.
Thank you. And yeah, I'll be intrigued to see the work that comes off the back of that funding for the, I've forgotten what it's called, for weight bias. I'll be really intrigued to see that work. So I'll be looking for that to come back. Okay, I don't see any further hands. So I'll move on to 5.12, the Midlothian HSCP Transformation Programme. And I'll go to Morag for this one. I just will warn off time. I'm aware that some officers need to be shooting off at 4 o'clock for other meetings, so just if we can keep things brief, that would be great. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I will do. So really, members will have seen most of this in their development sessions. We were just aware that we hadn't kind of formally presented anything to the IGB just in terms of governance. So this paper just was a kind of high-level overview of the transformation programme and the 3 phases that we've talked to you about previously. Again, it's about delivering transformation, redesign and change to ensure that we've got a sustainable future model for health and social care, specifically in relation to the allocation of the budget that we have to work in with from partners. Phase 1 was last year pretty much, and as you know, we were presenting initially a 7 million overspend in social care. We managed to bring that down to 4.83, so still not a great position, but a much better position with the grip and control and redesign work that we did as phase 1. And again, just to note again, 6 million worth of savings that the team made is unprecedented as well. I guess through the pain of last year and pretty much spending every day talking about knee-jerk financial recovery and what else can we do and what's the least bad options to bring back to you, as you'll know, came our ideas around what a transformed model of care could look like and what it needed to look like indeed. So we split the next part of our transformation journey into phase 2 and 3, very much again underpinning an early intervention and prevention model of care and investment in community services rather than beds as well. You'll note from the paper the first or the phase 1 elements of care and the particular specialisms that we're going to be focusing on, and with my leadership team as senior responsible officers and the work streams that have all started, project based are in place, and the enablers such as workforce finance and so on are also sitting around the table with the teams. Transformation board has been up and running. We have an external person on the board again to provide some objective scrutiny and also some valuable experience around some national work that she's been involved with previously. You'll note again the principles that underpin the work going forward. Derek rightly challenges me every single meeting and said, yeah, what you're doing is good, but it's not transformation, it's service redesign. And I would say that most of the elements of the things that we've talked about are exactly that, they're service redesign. The thing that we will be doing, and we've had early discussions and engagement from eHealth with an NHS Lothian, the new digital director, is that we will be transforming the way we deliver care into an ageless model and utilising a community front door to control and support early access, easy navigation of the health and care system for people. That'll likely be a physical front door where people can actually walk in and present with a problem, as well as a digital front door, which might be, again, self-referral, or it could be, for example, referrals from the Royal Infirmary. We'll have a multi-agency triage team that will sit and review all of the requests for care or assistance that come in. And the idea being is the sooner that we can see these people or see these referrals, then we can manage people and manage the risk around that and allocate them to different parts of the offers that we have available, for example, third sector partners, community asset groups and so on, without having to enter into our statutory care and therefore delaying the need to come into statutory care or slowing down that journey for them as well. And again, the big thing around that is making it easy to navigate. I would rather have somebody walk in and saying, I'm just struggling a little bit to get out my chair, than wait until they fall in and they present at the Royal Infirmary with a fractured neck of femur, then we can't get them back home and so on as well. So very much flipping the traditional model way we work into that kind of transform model of care. I need to stop calling it transformation. I know that's a bit of a buzzword just now that is pretty meaningless to everybody. We just at this stage don't have a better phrase for it. So I'm keen that you could all give that some thought, because we want to have a comms and engagement campaign and plan that sit around this. And I'm keen again that we have a common language around it that we use not only with yourselves, colleagues in NHS Lothian and the council, but also with staff and with the public as well. And it's a common understood phrase that we're using. It describes kind of what our plans are moving forward. So don't necessarily need to know that just now, but if any of you have got any ideas, you could drop me an email, that would be great. I certainly don't want to call it the transformation programme. We will report back on progress on this as well. Again, this is more just about docking a paper to say this is the direction of travel. We'll do regular updates. Some of these things will be visible to you much sooner than others. A few of us, Chris, Fiona, and myself, went to see our new care facility in Polton Street in Bonnyrigg yesterday. It was absolutely amazing. It is going to be an absolutely fantastic resource for us. So there's 3 elements to that site. It's extra care housing, it's intermediate care, beds, respite and rehab, flats, as well as a kind of community hub area at the front as well, that we've got capacity to look at where that would add best value. It's a huge site. Even just now, it's not going to be ready till the end of the year, but even just now, the design of the rooms, the design of the gardens, the amount of meeting space, open space for gyms, for residents, the flow in the site, so having the extra care housing element sitting beside rehab, intermediate care home beds potentially and respite beds, the opportunity for us to use some extra care housing around palliative and end of life support. We've got some 2-bed flats there that would allow somebody who's dying and wants to die at home with their family to be with them, and they can cook and so on in the flat as well. So we don't want to just do a lift and shift with that. There's a massive opportunity there, and having actually visited it yesterday, I think the 3 of us came away smiling, just thinking, oh my goodness, it's going to be such a state-of-the-art place that we've got a huge opportunity to develop and make it a real kind of showcase for Midlothian. So that again will be coming sooner than later. We'll try and get a visit to that for board members when it's closer to being finished, so you can get an idea of what we're talking about. But again, we will report regularly back on the performance elements of the transformation programme. And if I can repeat myself and just ask if anybody has a better description of it that we can use across the board as part of the comms engagement plan, that would be really, really helpful. But happy again to take any questions.
Thank you, Morag. I'm delighted to hear that Polton Street's coming along nicely. I'll be looking forward to coming to have a look. Keith.
Yeah, I just have one bit to be clarified in the principles of the transformation. It's the first bit about shift focus away from more specialist services to community-based services. When I looked at the Audit Scotland one, it didn't say anything about moving away from specialists. It said moving towards community-based services. And I just wondered why we'd chosen that phrase about moving away from specialist services, because it strikes me specialist services might actually help in the prevention and self-management.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's a good point. And when they're using the word specialist, they're talking about kind of specialist hospital services. So if you take even physiotherapy, for example, they used to be seen as providing specialist usually orthopaedic related care there, and they were a specialist service, and people had to then go, if they went to the Royal Infirmary, they had to go there for their rehab. And in actual fact, you're absolutely right, 99% of the community teams can provide the same level of rehab there as well. So it's a good point in terms of how we use that descriptor, Keith, because we have got specialist teams in the community. The other thing I guess it potentially refers to is Nick talks about the social work and OT review that he's doing, and moving away from lots of little specialist teams into more generic, flexible and resilient teams as well. So we'll pick up your point around the wording around that. It's maybe something we need to clarify and change moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll go to Val.
Yeah, actually, I had the same question, so thanks for that, Keith. And it was probably just in relation to the reform agenda from the government, which is basically trying to get some of that specialist into the community. So I was kind of, yeah, so anyway, I think that point's taken. I heard yesterday about Glasgow having plans to create 1,000 beds in the community, virtual beds in the community. I don't know if others had heard of it. It was the first time I've heard of it. But again, it's in the context of that complexity coming out of the hospital into the community. So interested to see how that will go. The only other comment I have is, under the enablers, I'm just wondering about the place for and the profile of comms and engagement. Now, you've spoken a lot about it, Morag, so I have no doubt that you're on top of it and around it or whatever. But, when you have a list of enablers, I kind of wonder if comms and engagement should be in there just to give it the profile. It's not that it might be a work stream, but it's just about always having the comms and engagement right up there. Because I think the thing that is really tricky, and it's this soft stuff that we refer to, it's about leadership, but it's about communication. And I think sometimes we see that as the thing we do at the end of a process rather than the thing we do right through it, regardless of internal, external, who should we be communicating with? And we often find ourselves around this table. I think Derek would be testament to it, of sort of maybe in the past, we're very good at it now, of course, but it would have been helpful if the councillors had known a little bit earlier about this, that and the next thing. So when we have a big change programme like this, I just think having it centre and up the middle. Thanks, Morag. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Val. And that's a timing issue. We actually had our transformation board, we invited, and we're getting support from Midlothian Council comms team, so we invited them to the board, which was Friday, just to check their ability to support it or not. They sat through the whole board and they said absolutely yes. So I met with one of them today to do a piece of work around a council staff newsletter thing that goes out as well, and they're pulling together a plan. So it's really just timing around this, around them not being part of that enabler section, but you're absolutely right, and they are.
Thank you. I don't see any further hands, so we will revert back into the agenda. We skipped over items 5.7 and 5.9. Eloise is covering both. I note that the first one, the strategic plan, is just an update, so I don't know if Eloise just wants to take that in turn and then move on to 5.9, but I'll be led by Eloise.
Thanks, Chair, and really appreciate the flexibility with the agenda today. I had booked leave in terms of my role as Parent Council Chair to do an SBC presentation after an inspection, obviously with Jill being poorly, just needed to juggle a bit of scheduling to be able to dial in and do both, so really appreciate it. In terms of the strategic plan update, I'll just give you the key milestones that we're working to. So the 16th of July, it'll be going to Council CMT, followed by the 9th of September when it goes to Council. 2 days later, we'll be taking it to SPPC and NHS Lothian, and the 8th of October, it goes to NHS Lothian's board, and the following day, you will see it again as IJB members in terms of we aim to get that final approval secured on the 9th of October. We're still on track for that in terms of the work that's required, and I will make a shameless plug. Val, very helpful that you mentioned our comms team. They are incredibly supportive and have been doing a great job at promoting our health and care survey, which is open right now. So if you can check any of the Midlothian social feeds, I certainly know that Fergus has had it out on Twitter and Facebook a number of times already. It's gone out as an all-staff email as well. Obviously, we're focusing on the staff who are also residents because it's to capture the experience and views of Midlothian residents. And that will be analysed, and the data from that will be added into the revised version of the strategic plan before it comes back to you for approval. So that work is on the go just now. we'd had the first couple of days it was open last week, we'd had about 50 responses within the first couple of days, and I'll be getting a report each Friday from the company who are doing the survey management for us this time around. So hoping to achieve somewhere in the region of the citizens panel last year, which was about 500 responses. So just fingers crossed. And if any of you live in Midlothian, you are very encouraged to participate in the survey. And if you know anyone who does, please share the link. So that's it in terms of strategic plan, unless there's any questions from anyone about those dates.
Morag.
Yeah, not about the dates, but again, in terms of taking it through the process so far, we've taken it to did an elected members briefing, taken it to council CMT, and we've taken it to Midlothian planning committee as well. And the draft has been really well received. Some good comments and some feedback, which Jill and Eloise have incorporated into it. But again, really, really well received and very different to some of the other area strategic plans as well, and commented on as well. So well done to everybody that's involved in it. Obviously go through the final governance processes as Eloise has talked about.
Grand.
Yeah, will we go on to 5.9? Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Connor.
Grand. Thank you.
So in terms of the performance report, you have the standard section that you get every time in terms of the charts showing the MSG indicators, and obviously the management data there, which often reflects a slightly different position. And it was early May when I accessed that data. So you'll be able to see that on some of the indicators, we are actually doing better than the time lag validated indicators would suggest, but on a couple of others we're not doing as well. But it's a very flexible thing and literally depends on week to week when you actually access that management data. It is much more volatile than the validated stuff. And also in terms of the inclusion, now that we bring you the OutNav summary for each of the columns on a rolling basis. So the column that we focused on for this report is column 1, which is the question around what we do. Obviously, as the board, you know that what you do is that you write the strategic plan, you issue the directions and allocate the resources, and you put in place those robust governance arrangements for each of those activities. So we have rated those activities for the update for this month as showing great progress and high confidence in the evidence, which gives us that dark green colour on the map, which you'll see within the appendix. And probably the best thing to do is to really, I suppose, focus attention on the success criteria that are also included in that report and the sources that we use for that. It is a really comprehensive summary of all of the work that has been undertaken by and on behalf of the board, certainly within the last 12 to 18 months, around things like the strategic plan development, the market facilitation plan, the housing statement, the IJB's performance framework, issuing directions, and all the work that you did in terms of informing the design of those directions. So it is, it's probably not a page turner in the sense of most novels, but it's certainly it's a comprehensive update. And if there are any questions, I'd be happy to take them now, or any feedback and reflections in terms of how we've assessed the progress and the confidence. If there's any views on whether we've got that right, it would be really helpful to hear from you. Thanks.
Thank you, Eloise, and thank you for coming back today to present these papers and updates. Does anyone have any questions for Eloise on this? Val?
Yeah, just a comment. I mean, you know, it's really, I mean, the occupied bed days is the thing that sort of sticks out in the performance report, and we've had a conversation about that, so I think that's fine. The outcomes, the OutNav stuff, I'm just really thoughtful about the amount of work that must go into it. It's extremely thorough. So, you know, hats off to you for that. But I wonder as an IJB how much resource you're putting into producing this, even on a rolling basis. And I suppose in the interest of time, Connor, I'm sort of thinking, you know, if we had the opportunity at a development session, you know, sometime through the year, there's no hurry on it, to spend a bit of time wondering how we can best use this information and discuss it. Because my observation or concern is that you put a huge amount of work into it, it comes to us, and then we don't interrogate it, value it, scrutinize it in the way that you might want. And I wonder if there's maybe a different way of us doing that. So that's just a question, observation stroke question, to maybe bring back to Jill, Eloise. But I'm just conscious that there's just tons of stuff here, and it's processed and it's interesting, etc., etc. Thanks.
Thanks, Val. I mean, on one hand, it's really lovely to see the work recognised, but I'd try to reassure all of you that there is not any duplication here. There's not overwork. There's not a disproportionate resource allocated to it. What we do is we use OutNav really as the kind of almost the library for where we hold everything that we already create in other spaces. And so it's not designed to create stuff just for the sake of OutNav. OutNav is just where we hold everything. So it'll come from other reports that we've already written. It'll come from papers that we've been sending elsewhere. So it's really more, I suppose, an editing activity rather than a creation activity. But I think it's the only space that we have where we hold everything in the one place, which I think is why it looks like there's so much work involved. But it's done throughout the whole year. I mean, that really is a summary of a year's work pretty much in there, which is why the columns are designed to be updated to the board on a rolling basis, so that we're only looking at one column each meeting, so that we're not effectively going back and doing any rework. But no, I appreciate the concern for the workload implications, and we try and make it as slick as possible. Thanks.
Thank you. I don't see any further hands, so that was our final report for today's meeting. And the next meeting of the Integration Joint Board is on Thursday, the 21st of August, between 2 and 4. I'm sure Democratic Services will update members of where this will be happening, whether it's hybrid or online. I'd imagine we'll try and get that to you with haste so that everyone knows what's happening. And this is my last meeting as chair. So thank you very much, everyone, for making it on time to the end of the meeting. That's great. What a gift. Right. Okay. Thank you all. Bye-bye.